My father was a white soldier. I've talked about him some on this channel before. He died in a motorcycle accident around 2 years ago. So I want to give a better picture of the kind of circumstances that I was raised in and why I'm so adamant about talking about racial issues today. So if you look at me, I look full Asian. I've been treated as Asian my entire life. But I've done the 23andMe DNA test. Like, I am 50% Anglo-Saxon, mainly from the London area. But my father is just kind of like generic American white. He was a soldier since he was pretty much a teenager. So over 30 years he was in the U.S. Army. So I grew up in a household that moved around a lot. I spent my early years in Korea. I was born in America, lived for 4 years in Korea, and then moved back to the States and moved back to Korea when I was 20, when I just turned 20. And I've lived in Korea for my entire adult life. So I grew up with a white father and a Korean mother. So I did have a mix of culture. But in America, I would say that I was treated as Asian, but also, let's be realistic, like, we live in a modern time, and when I was a kid, like, I had a very diverse group of friends: a Jewish kid, a black kid, white kids, Filipino kids, Mexican kids. Like, that's when I was a kid. And when I was older too, it was pretty much like that. I actually didn't have many Asian friends. My mother did try to keep us in tune with our Asian culture. Now, I'm very liberal in most of my views. That's not the way I was raised. We went to church every weekend, and in church it was predominantly white people. I know after I moved out, when I was older, my parents, they went to a Korean church. But when I was growing up, it was mainly white people in the South that also had black people. I remember there was a black preacher who was very passionate, but and then later when we moved to the Northwest, it was like that too. Mainly white people. So I grew up around mostly white people, and when I lived in the South, at least, although there was diversity, most white people in the South are very conservative. I'm not going to say I experienced a lot of outright racism, like people, I look back and the concept of police brutality towards black people seemed very foreign to me because I had never seen anything like that. The concept of people hating Asian people just for being Asian seemed very foreign to me because racism, like what we're seeing now, the rise in hate crimes, and then the more blatant examples of racism, that's not what you see in day-to-day America. Racism and institutionalized racism is more subtle than that. You've heard the term microaggression probably. That's more of what I experienced growing up. Seeing racist stereotypes on TV, emasculating, degrading images of Asian men, kids doing this to me, small dick jokes, stereotypes about Asian people being bad drivers, or the model minority stereotype of being good at math and things like that. So having a white father, I'm not going to say it didn't have advantages, because I believe that there were certain socioeconomic advantages that come with having a white father. But in a sense, I feel that I did not have, and I do have a sibling who, as he gets older, he looks more Asian, but he was definitely more white passing than I am. So having my mother for guidance was one thing, but in many ways I felt very, I didn't even consciously think of myself as Asian in a way. But looking back, I recall now feeling somewhat envious towards other races in my teenage years because I hated being pigeonholed into these stereotypes of weak, nerdy, undesirable, non-sexual. So my views, and like I said, my father was a white, conservative Christian man. He had Fox News on every day. He listened to Rush Limbaugh in the radio like every day. So I kind of learned to tune these things out, but that's what it was like growing up. Those were the kind of ideas I was exposed to. Those were the kind of ideas my father held. Supported Donald Trump, thought Black Lives Matter was like a terrorist organization, which is the same kind of rhetoric that they used about the Black Panther organization. And I just absorbed these views and never consciously questioned them. I grew up thinking gay people were wrong and evil in a way. And that's the thing about my father too. It was never like outright hate. Like he would even say that he felt more comfortable in mixed race environments. Because also being in the military is surprisingly mixed race. So I want to say about my father, despite our disagreements on politics, and we did get into, I think, the most intense political argument we ever got in. I said to him, like, you don't get it because you wear your white skin like a uniform and it protects you and you don't have to experience the things that other minorities do. And he just kind of stopped talking and he was mad. But that's like the most intense it ever got in terms of politics between us. Other stuff growing up, things could get intense in our family sometimes, but that's something else. But I feel like my father never really tried to force his views on me, even though he disagreed with me as I got older and started to think more for myself. So I want to give him credit about that. I think he tried to understand where I came from, but that's whatever advantages that come with having a white father, the disadvantages that I don't think he ever understood what it was like to experience life as an Asian person. But he definitely did sympathize, and I write about this in my book that I'm going to publish soon, but he always saw me as his son. I was never his Asian son. My mother was never his Asian wife. It was just my mom, his wife, and me, his son. So that's why I want to make clear that in a way, I feel for white people who are caught in this dialogue of race relations and they just kind of don't get it. And I think most white people don't have malicious intent, but institutionalized racism and ethnic tensions do exist and they're just kind of confused by it. So I do have some sympathy in those regards, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about where I came from. I suddenly thought of it and wanted to talk about it for my 233 subscribers. So thanks for listening. Peace out.